Hey nerds! For our latest version, we've once again left nothing on the table to deliver some solid highlights to you, like real-time insights with live values. You heard right, real-time. No fiddling around in the menu, everything live and right at your fingertips. Then there's the new Fixture Simulation, allowing you to virtually replicate assembled states and eliminating the need for special clamping devices. Or the new Deformation Fields, offering full access to all adaptive transformation settings, coming with a powerful preview for precise results. And retraining of paint and segment models. Reuse previous segmentation models and make them more robust against common variances during CT scan. All right, then join me on a little tour through the feature highlights of our brand new 2023.4. Let's go. The new Live Values feature simplifies the inspection of color overlays and the creation of annotations. Enable the live values in the analysis ribbon and get an immediate value of the active color overlay when you hover over them. You can see the live values in both the 2D and 3D views. If you have multiple color overlays selected, you will see all values of the color overlay together. To create annotations, simply click with the left mouse button on the color overlay, and you will get preview annotations for all active color overlays. If you want to create a permanent annotation, click Create, and an annotation is created at the exact spot you clicked on the color overlay. Live values are enabled by default to make the best out of each color overlay. Do you have a deformed part and want to know if it will be within tolerance in an assembled state? Fixture Simulation virtually simulates the assembled state and replaces the need for a special clamping device for an as-assembled CT scan. For the Fixture Simulation, we need a CAD file and a CT scan of the deformed part. First, we need to align the CAD with the CT scan to calculate the deformation field between the two parts. All the fixture areas of the assembly need to be defined on the CAD file as a region of interest. For the fixture areas, the degrees of freedom can be locked separately to represent the assembled state as best as possible. Once all necessary input parameters are defined, the internal finite element solver calculates the virtual fixtured part based on its physical parameters and the fixture regions. The result is a mesh and a color overlay of the displacement. To check whether the virtually fixed part is in tolerance or not, the classical metrology workflow can be applied. With the Fixture Simulation, you no longer need a special clamping device for your parts. Simply scan the parts and virtually apply the clamping situation. Deformation Field. Several functions in our software allow non-rigid registrations. Wherever you can use it, you can either do an on-the-fly computation of a deformation field or use an existing one. In the past, the compensation mesh dialog was the only place in our software where you had full control over all settings for this computation. Since this dialog was not included in all license configurations, we have extracted this capability and made it an individual function, which we now call Deformation Field. Contrary to the past, the deformation field is no longer computed under the CAD file, but rather under the CT scan. Look at this simulated scan, for example. It has a dent in the upper part, and one of the drill holes has been moved in the Y direction a bit. Let's compute a deformation field on this scan. Select the scan, then Deformation Field. Enter the CAD file as a source object and click Create Deformation Field. A newly computed deformation field will appear under your scan. The deformation field contains two different things. The first, deformation lines, is a 2D and 3D visualization of the deformation field visible here. The second is a temporary rendering of the morphed object, which you can use to assess whether the morphing that will result from this is okay. Once you are happy with your computation, you can use it for multiple things, such as the morph mesh functionality. Here, you can either run a fresh computation or use an existing field. Let's use the newest one. Click Create Morphed Mesh. A new mesh will show up in your scene, which is precisely the same mesh that had been visualized here before. Another use case is a compensated mesh. In that case, go to Compensate Mesh. Again, you are free to compute a new one or use an existing field. Select the field we just computed and click Create Compensated Mesh. Another possibility is iterative mesh compensation. This is a workflow meant to be used to improve the result of a first computation. You can select a source object, select a first computation, and create a compensated mesh. When you reprint that compensated mesh and scan it again and are still not happy with the result, you can delete it. You can add a second iteration, which will consider the first computation. And if that is still not good enough, you can add a third iteration. Coming back to our initial computation, let's have a look at the quality. As you can see in 3D, the bump on the top has been compensated properly. But when we zoom into this drill hole, we see the computation is not good enough. For such cases, you can now use constraints. Simply fit a geometry element on a structure that exists on both objects, like this cylinder, on the scan and on the CAD. When you compute a deformation field, you can now open the expert options and tick the box "Ensure geometry elements match" and then run the computation. This will force the corresponding geometry element positions into the same spot in space and adaptively morph the rest around it. Deformation field. Compute deformation fields and apply them to morphings using new user interfaces. In the newest version of VGSTUDIO MAX, you can now retrain your paint and segment models. Let's assume you have trained a model on one dataset and it works perfectly on that one, but when you open another dataset and reapply the model, it doesn't work perfectly. You can now solve this issue with the paint and segment retraining function. What we're trying to do here is segment the material from the background and the pores from the material. First, let's try it with an existing model by clicking the Apply Paint and Segment Model button, selecting the correct model for your problem, and then activating the preview. Now, let's zoom in to look a little bit closer. Here we see an undersegmentation of the material. There's more background than there should be. So we click the Retrain Model button and end up in the labeling mode that you already know from the paint and segment training mode. The difference is that now, the new labeling is based on all the voxels that you labeled before on the initial training dataset. That means that you retain all the existing data from the initial model. Let's just switch to the material label and label some more voxels. Here, and here, and it's already quite good. Now, let's zoom out a bit and see if there are more problems. We might also want to include this pore. Just select the pore label and add another voxel and the segmentation will change right away. And this is how you can easily refine your paint and segment models. Just don't forget to click on the Save Model button when you're done. Give it a name like Retrained Model and save. You can now use this for segmenting any new similar datasets. This not only helps improve your model on one dataset, but will also teach it how to deal with variances in gray values, arising from higher or lower intensities of your X-ray tube during image acquisition. By applying the paint and segment retraining over multiple datasets, your model gets more robust against the common variances that occur during CT scanning. It not only simplifies your segmentation tasks, but also continuously helps to speed up your workflows. Retrain your paint and segment models. New in version 23.4. These are just the highlights of our new release. You can find many more new features on our homepage. The link is below in the video description. Download the new VGSTUDIO MAX today and start enjoying all the improvements right away. Have fun with the new version and see you next time.